case you haven't noticed, business is evolving, and so are business schools. So with your MBA, how are you going to stay one step ahead? Well, head to New York. You're going to get real world exposure, the classrooms, boardrooms, trading floors, retail. The city has everything. And of course, it all comes together at Columbia Business School with the global perspectives that the Columbia MBA will bring. And it's my pleasure to welcome to Center Court Samantha Shapses. Samantha is the Associate Dean and Dean of Student Affairs for the full-time MBA program at Columbia. Samantha, thank you for joining us at Center Court.
Thank you for having me.
You know the business school very well. You also had time, I guess, at CEPA, at the School of International and Public Affairs. When you tell people where you work or you meet a candidate, how do you like to describe Columbia Business School?
Well, I like to think of Columbia Business School, and I will abbreviate and call it CBS, that's our, CBS talk around here, as a dynamic. I describe it as collaborative, and I describe it as connected. And I can expand a little bit just to kind of make sure that people really understand what I'm talking about. I think it's dynamic because we're really thinking about how management is infused to all of these different, very cutting edge topics. Everything from 21st century finance to entrepreneurship to innovation to business and society. We're attracting students from all sorts of different disciplines. That was something that was new for me starting at a business school, is that not everyone is coming from business. And so we're bringing together all sorts of different minds. And so it's a really dynamic place to be with a lot of really diverse thinkers, which is really exciting. I would say we're collaborative. That's a huge core value of CBS. And it starts really at how we kind of approach community building. We set up our learning teams, and your learning teams are 5 to 6 people that you go through your core curriculum with. And your learning teams build into a cluster, which is a small microcosm of your class. And it's a scaffolded approach to community building. And we do that to make sure that we can take what is one of the largest MBA programs among our peers into a really small kind of community-oriented experience, where when you walk places in our new buildings, which are much larger than our old building, you really know people and feel kind of connected, which is the last word that I gave you. And I think the connection is about not only being connected to the students, but also being, we're fortunate to do this work in New York City, which I consider to be one of the most connected cities in the world. And that's not just because I'm a native New Yorker. It's, vibrant, it's excited, and it's connected both locally and globally. And so we do it here in a place where we have access to thousands of alumni, both locally and globally. Our alumni are not only in the city, but they're constantly visiting New York because it is such an incredible hub. We're fortunate to be able to do that work here where we live in New York City. Not everyone can get on a train and be at their internship, or get on the A train and be, at an interview. And we have that luxury. So we feel very connected as well.
It makes it easier for organizing the alumni reunions with everybody coming.
We actually just had alumni reunion this past weekend, and it was very robust. Yes.
How is everybody, both staff and students alike, enjoying your new home in this spectacular Manhattanville campus?
It's been great. I mean, I think it's really breathed a lot of life, and it came at a real kind of inflection point because it was, right as we were coming out of COVID. And so, I think that the buildings are full of so much light, truly. I mean, literally and physically, they're windowed buildings that let in light. And I think that air and space has really lifted kind of like the spirit. I think the other thing too is that there's just so much innovative space that was really built to create those pockets of communities that I just talked about. So the way that the classrooms are created, they are they have breakout rooms that are appropriate for the size. And then there's a 50-person classroom, a 75-person classroom, a 150-person classroom. And so it really meets the pedagogy behind the teaching. And I say that actually from experience because I'm teaching this right now for the first time at CBS. And so to be able to kind of move my classroom around is really helpful when I'm thinking about different ways that I want to teach things. So.
When students arrive and you welcome them with this sense of the community that you've emphasized, because you talked about the size of the full-time program, there's also the J term, so those that are arriving at a later stage. What do you sort of see in them? And then as you follow that journey, these pockets of community that are creating, which, across 90 nationalities, so much diversity, it must be very exciting to see that vibrant relationship that's developing.
Yeah. I like to use a lot of models to think about things. And so one of the things that I've worked on is actually creating a student life cycle model where we think about kind of like, how do students enter their school? And so they enter their school and they're thinking about exposure. And then they move into a next semester where they're thinking about exploration. And they're really kind of, well, in their first semester, they're thinking about setting their foundation. And so really building relationships with people, going into their core. The next semester, they finish their core, they go into their exploration. And so they're maybe still networking with their cluster, but they're exploring student organizations, getting involved in leadership, and really exploring kind of different avenues, internships, elective classes. Then they move into the application phase. So they're going into their internships, really applying the knowledge that they had in their first year. And then they're coming back and they're thinking about growth. How do I take everything that I learned in my first year and how do I grow from it? And then in their final semester, and this is all ideally, right? There are, of course, people have different experiences, but in their final semester, it comes back to that connection point. How do we get people kind of solidified back to the community? And so I like to use that model to really think about kind of like, what do students need at each point in time? And how do we meet their needs and get them to those places, and use that as a model for their growth. But yeah, we have we have so many different students coming from different places. One of the other ways that I do like to explain CBS that I did not mention earlier was that, this is not a one size fit all degree, and this is not a one size fit all school, that there is something here for everyone. That we are a place that is innovative and that you can explore, that you can build, but that we are grounded by kind of like our core values and our core curriculum. And so it's in that grounding that you kind of have a foundation to launch and be fluid, and to find what you're looking for. And so we kind of like try to unite and settle, but also give people to kind of the space to explore and build opportunity.
Well, yes, advice that you might give them on day one, because almost overwhelming, like kids in a candy store. There's
It's
so
very
many opportunities. How do you sort of say, okay, you've got the next 2 years to explore, to push yourselves out of your comfort zones and really make the most of all of the opportunities that the program's going to offer?
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you, but I'm just warning anyone who comes to CBS, I'm going to say this again in my orientation speech. So I'm ruining my orientation speech, but I will do it for this purpose. So, you may have seen before, we have this hashtag that says why CBS. And that is often, it either kind of precedes or it will, a student's decision as to why they chose Columbia Business School. And you'll see it on people's LinkedIn or Instagram. I don't think I'm not, whatever social media of choice people are using these days. And so at orientation, I present a new frame. You have why CBS, which is why you chose to come to CBS. And then you also have CBS why. And that's your passion and your reason for being at CBS. Your CBS why is like, what did you come here to do? And I tell students that one of the most important things for you to do is to figure out what your CBS why is and to use that as a point of reflection throughout your time at Columbia Business School. The MBA goes really quick. And so you really have to actually be focused on your goals and what you want to get out of this experience. Because we do have so many opportunities, you kind of have to have a plan. And we have a lot of resources and people that you can talk to help develop that plan, but it really starts with you and knowing what that focus is. And that's kind of why we hone in on what your CBS why is. So it becomes a way to kind of articulate, what you want to do while you're at CBS and what your goals are. The one thing that I do try to explain to students is that sometimes when you put yourself in a new environment with new experiences and new people, your CBS why changes.
Right.
And that's okay. Your CBSY can shift with new information as it should. That's how we kind of like grow and learn. So that's my advice to incoming students.
So thank you for sharing that. Not that anybody's watching, of course, Samantha, but in terms of sort of both being in the present and anticipating the future, we talk about how the Columbia MBA prepares you today for the rapidly changing world of tomorrow and some of the shifts that you then just described. So, what do you feel are perhaps key leadership skills that students will need to be successful in their future careers?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the words that you mentioned, shift, is really important. I think it's really important for our student leaders to be our student leaders. I think about student leaders a lot because my office oversees them. But our students, generally speaking, to be agile. I can name at least 3 conferences that I've listened to alumni speakers in the past 6 months where that was the number one piece of advice that they gave to our students, to be agile, because we live in such a rapidly changing world. And so we encourage our students to really approach their careers and their career goals with a degree of flexibility, to really be able to kind of take in and process information and then ask critical questions that will help them to kind of take them to the next place. The world is a different place today than when you were admitted 6 months ago or a year ago. And sometimes you have to pivot and make a choice on your career or on your personal life. And oftentimes those things combine and create a layered effect. So that's one of the first things that I would say, is to be agile. I think another leadership skill that we really value at CBS is to be inclusive. I think a lot of that really builds on Dr. Kathy Phillips' work, who is no longer with us, but was hugely impactful at Columbia Business School, and is for whom the Phillips Pathway for Inclusive Leadership program, and it's a requirement for our business school. That's what it's named after. And Dr. Phillips' work really focused on kind of how inclusive teams and diverse teams are more productive, they are smarter, they challenge people to work harder in different ways. You make less assumptions about people when you're working with diverse teams. And so you actually have to meet the moment in a way that you cannot do when you're working with a homogenous team. So I think that when we learn how to be inclusive leaders, we create teams that are higher performing, that really speak to global needs. And when we create inclusive teams, we create spaces in which members really have an investment in the organization that they're working for. And so they really feel seen and really contribute to the organization. So I think that that's another key piece. I think the one thing, though, is that I always just like to mention is that learning to be an inclusive leader is something that takes time and intention. And so it's something that you really have to work on continuously.
Right.
I don't think it's something that you can just learn at CBS. I think that this is someplace that you put that into practice, and hopefully it's something that goes on throughout your career. And I think the last thing that I would say that is a deep value, I know, of the school and also of our dean, is to be future focused and to really think about kind of what's coming next. And I mean that in a variety of ways. But I think one of the best places that's illustrated by is probably in the tech field. Our students don't necessarily need to be data scientists or engineers, but they need to have some sort of fluency in those fields. They need to be able to ask those questions and really understand how they can implement those systems, because they are the future. And so I think part of being a leader in that space is kind of not only meeting the moment, but thinking about how do we go beyond this moment and ask, what skills do I need to lead 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? Not just what do I need for tomorrow or for today.
Right. Yeah, you commented already in the last 6 months. And of course, it was only November 2022 when ChatGPT was announced to the world, and it seems a very different place since then. So how you might take a technological advancement like that Columbia MBA students are sort of both looking at the technology, but then this whole sort of questioning of how can it be a tool? What might its impact be today, but also 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now? That's something that you'd commonly see as in terms of discussions in the CBS classroom.
Oh yeah. Like every day, not only in the CBS classroom, but in the hallway, in the lobby, in the elevator. We just had a new AI student organization approved that's going to go into effect. I mean, yeah, it's an everyday conversation. And it's not only that conversation, it's, a conversation on ethics and leadership and what do these questions mean for managers? There's so much wrapped into these questions.
And when you walk through the corridors on the new Manhattanville campus and hear these conversations, or look into a classroom and there's this animated discussion, that must be a wonderful moment to sort of think we've brought these individuals from all over the world just for this sort of exchange and experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's for me, it's always been one of the perks of working in academia. I mean, I've spent the past 20 years of my career in academia, so I certainly chose it for a reason. But I think that is one of the things that has always really attracted me to spaces of higher education. And I think it's one of the things that's so special about CBS is that it's a rare opportunity to put people in one space to grow and learn and say, this is a time that you're just devoting to really explore. That's a huge privilege and a huge luxury. And our students really make the most of it.
Yeah. With the sort of inclusive leadership and the emphasis on community that you have shared, as our viewers are thinking, is Columbia the right business school for me and the MBA experience? How do you like them to sort of think about that sense of inclusion and everything that the program represents and what it offers, to be a home, whether you're a consultant or a banker, or an opera singer. I think in your latest class you have an opera singer.
Yes.
For people to be able to sort of say, this is the right place for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think inclusion, I think what I said before about Columbia kind of not being a fits one all degree, a one size fits all, I think that is really represented within our student body. I think that our approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion is also not about one identity. It's about many identities, right? And so when we talk about DEI, we're not just talking about race or just gender. We're talking about race, gender, ability, class, sexual orientation. And then we're talking about all the ways that they map onto each other, and all of the different kind of perspectives and walks of life that people come from, whether or not you are a banker or a consultant, all of these things kind of layer on to who we are and how we experience the world. I think creating an inclusive space is about creating a space in which you feel valued and you feel that you have a seat at the table and that you can be heard. And I think one of the things that's very important for me in my office is going one step beyond inclusivity, which is also creating a sense of belonging, which is that every student who walks through our door really feels that they belong at Columbia Business School. And so we do that in a variety of different ways. And I think that our approach to creating inclusive spaces is really twofold. One, it's supporting students with marginalized identities and giving them the resources that they need to succeed and thrive at CBS, whether or not that's through affinity groups or history months, partnerships with organizations and internships and programs outside the university, and partnerships with administrators like myself. And then the other space is also just opening up space for people to grow and learn, and just presenting graduate school and the MBA experience as an incredible opportunity to learn about identities and opportunities outside of yourself, right? And that comes back to that community scaffolding that we do. So, kind of really weaving the DEI messaging into everything that we do. I like to use an equity framework for the Office of Student Affairs, which is what I oversee. And, an equity framework asks, how are we meeting the needs of our students? And each student is different and each student needs something else. So how do we meet them where they are? And what are the resources and services that will get them there? How do we make each student feel like they belong at CBS? So that's where we start, but it's a lot of work, continuous work. And it needs to have the support of the entire school and of the leadership. And I feel very fortunate to work at a place where I believe that support is there. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't.
Yeah. From the sense of belonging to the agility, as you then think of how Columbia Business School, CBS, continues to grow and the focus, what do you imagine in the coming years? Where do you see the MBA, its importance, and how CBS is going to capture that?
I think it's a really great question. And I think that, I think it's in some ways related to this idea of being future focused, and really thinking not 5 years, 10 years, but kind of 20 years, 50 years into the future. We have a dean who really believes and appreciates and enjoys disruption and innovation, and he has a vision that includes that, and I think our vision follows suit. I think a really good example of that would be right now this fall we're launching our MBA XMS program, which is a partnership it's a dual degree partnership between the Columbia Business School MBA and the School of Engineering Masters in Science. And as I'm sure you can imagine, that's been going on for many years. Like, this has been many years in the work. And we just happened to be launching this program in the year that ChatGPT blew up. But I say that just because, it was the forethought into these are two essential fields that we need to bring together. It's essential that we have these types of two minds, engineering and business-minded people, in the same place, studying the same things at the same time and doing these dual degrees. They will graduate with 2 degrees, not 1. Like, it was the forethought that brought us to where we are, and now it's just kind of perfectly placed in a time. And I think it's that type of forethought that will continue us on that trajectory. So I think we're going to see developments in a whole bunch of areas, and some of them have already started to be launched. I think we'll see things in business and society. We've seen a lot of really great work through the CBS Hub, which is doing a really great things on AI and democracy. I think we're going to see things in 21st century finance, the digital future, entrepreneurship. Climate and sustainability is a huge priority for us, and we've invested a great deal in that. So, it's hard to predict, but I can tell you that we will continue to evolve. And our primary focus will always be providing an excellent academic experience, a really strong, connected community where students feel a sense of belonging and agency and partnership in co-creating their experience, an incredible network to rely on when you're ready to take your next step. Yeah. So that's the goal.
all of those planning teams, and as you imply, there's an entire community that has ideas and will contribute to this. Perhaps my final question, touch points with the school. There's this wonderful admissions team and the time that they take connecting with second-year students, these fiercely loyal alums that you have. But even you remind me, of course, of theory and knowledge at the school. There is a wonderful section of the website that captures that as we look at 21st century finance and all of these different themes. What would your final words be to our viewers, just finding out more about CBS and what you would recommend?
Yeah, I think the best way to find out about CBS is to talk to people. I really do. I think our students are incredible, and I think that they will give you the most honest perspective. And I think that that's really important. I think it's important to really know what you're getting into when you choose to do an MBA. It's a huge investment in time and, and money, for being honest. And it's a big commitment. And so I think our students are really great about kind of talking about, you know, the places in which they feel challenged and the places in which they're reaping the benefits. And, in we always hope that the benefits outweigh the challenges, but we accept that there are challenges as well, and we work towards improving them. So I think talking to students is great. We have an incredible Hermes Society through our admissions program of students that are equipped to answer questions and have conversations with students, but they have real conversations. It's not like they're not selling the school. They're sharing their honest perspectives and opinions. And then we also have an incredible admissions team who are out on the road. And so I think meeting people is really important. And then the last thing I would say is if you happen to be in New York and you can come to campus during the kind of academic year. And so those are the months between September and May. I would say that is when you will get the best sense of what the campus feels like. Because right now we don't have that many students around. We have a small, our J-term classes here, but in these big buildings, it feels a little sparse. But you can kind of feel the energy, go to some events, and that gives you a good sense of how CBS feels and if it's the right fit for you.
Right. Well, you said start by talking with people. Samantha, thank you for talking with us with that same degree of honesty and enthusiasm for the school. It's absolutely pervasive. And was wonderful to be able to capture that. So your admissions team will be saying, lots of people are reaching out. That starts with this recording. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.